Thank you so much for joining me and Claudia in the beautiful city of San Elizario. As many of you know, San Elizario has always had a very special place in our hearts. This is where Claudia and I got married almost 3 years ago, and at the Adobe Horseshoe right in front of us is where I was sworn in to serve the people of Precinct 3 in 2013. So I thought it would be fitting that between these two very special places that I announce my re-election campaign for County Commissioner for Precinct 3. As all of you know, this is the place where we came together as a community more than 6 years ago, my first year in office, to fight against acts of corruption by elected representatives who abuse their positions of public trust to take advantage of this community for their own personal agendas. And as many of you remember, there were several moments where it felt that it was a fight that we couldn't win. I remember very clearly some people said, "It's just the way things have always been. So why waste time because it won't matter in the end?" That was the first of many times as commissioner that I had heard that phrase. And every time I've heard it, I've asked God first for patience and for help to muster every ounce of strength and ability to prove those people wrong and to show that change is possible and that we can never lose hope in the things that we want to create for a better community. Today, San Elizario is the newest city in El Paso County governed by their own leaders. And that's because you came together to show this entire county that we will not be defined by the actions of a few, nor by the failures of the past, but that we can chart a new course where we will determine what is possible. That outcome inspired me and taught me early on in my term that no matter the odds, to never lose faith, and perhaps more importantly, to continue searching for solutions, no matter how elusive they may seem. And that experience also taught me that if we're going to do the most good with this opportunity that the people of this community have entrusted to me, then we cannot be afraid to tackle the most difficult of challenges with courage and conviction, knowing that we have the power to do incredible things together, especially for the most vulnerable. I want to share a story with you. In my very first week in office, I was visited by 10 residents from the Sparks community. 2 of them were elderly residents, Mr. and Mrs. Hernandez. During our meeting, they told me that they had met with every commissioner from this area for the last 37 years because they lacked access to clean drinking water, even though all their neighbors received first-time access to potable water and wastewater service. Their street was left out. I'll never forget what one of the residents said to me. She said, "One of your opponents knocked on our door and promised that they would get us drinking water. So we all voted for that person, and we're sorry. But if you can help us, we'll vote for you." It was difficult enough to hear how long they've had to endure without the most basic of services for over 3 decades, something we all take for granted. But it was heartbreaking that they thought they had to tell me that they would vote for me so that I would work on their behalf. It says a lot about the kind of politics that permeated our community for decades. And I told them, as I have told many people, "You could tell me to my face that you'll never vote for me, and I will do everything I possibly can to help you." If we as public servants are going to inspire hope and restore trust from the people we represent, then we must reassure the public that no matter our differences, we are here to serve everyone, and we must be persistent in conveying that message and follow through. When we looked into their case, we discovered that through no fault of their own, their street could not receive the grant funds for water and wastewater because the developer never paid taxes on a piece of land that they used as their residential street, and the developer had since died. We were told that it was a very unfortunate situation, but that nothing could be done by the county to fix the problem. After the success here in San Elizario, I huddled with my staff, and I said, "We may not be able to fix the problem ourselves at the county, but there has to be something that we can do." And we figured out why, in 37 years, no commissioner fixed this problem. There was a solution, it was just very difficult. We learned that if we went to all the taxing entities, the school district, the community college, the hospital district, and the water district, and asked them to reduce the taxes owed to them to $1, the county could accept the road and we could apply for a grant and get them connected. We spent the next several months getting on all the agendas for all the boards and asked them to reduce the outstanding tax. It took a lot of time, but we did it. And for the first time in 37 years, the Hernandez family got drinking water and wastewater service. And I can tell you to this day, seeing the reactions of the families when they turned on their tap for the first time is something that I will never forget. But 6 months later, we went to visit the Hernandez family to see how they were doing. Mr. Hernandez invited us in, and he said his wife had just passed away a few weeks before. It seemed so grossly unfair. Despite his grief, Mr. Hernandez told us that his wife was very grateful to have clean drinking water. But his kind words did little to quell the grief that we all felt after fighting so hard and knowing that Mrs. Hernandez fought for 37 years only to reap the benefits of her efforts for just 6 months. This is a story that I think about often. With the numerous social justice issues that exist in our precinct, we must act with a great sense of urgency. For too long, our precinct was without diligent and effective representation, and many of the inequalities and injustices that exist today have been around for far too long. And many residents like Mrs. Hernandez simply can't afford to wait. But since 2013, the county has helped provide over 3,100 new connections to first-time water or wastewater service. This November, voters will have the opportunity to vote on a $200 million in bonds for the Texas Water Development Board that will help build critical first-time water and wastewater connections in our community and throughout Texas. Another critical issue that I have prioritized is the continued urgent need for criminal justice and bail reform at the county. When I took office in 2013, individuals who were arrested for low-level, nonviolent offenses were spending an average of 40 days in jail, mainly because they could not afford to pay the money bail that was imposed on them. Today, that number is down to approximately 16 days, a number that is still far too high, because according to a recent study here in El Paso, a person arrested on a low-level offense who can afford to pay a money bond is typically released in less than 24 hours. It is wrong and unjust that the poor are incarcerated far longer than those who have the financial means to pay for their freedom. It is not only immoral, but taxpayers are footing the bill every day for someone who is in jail who doesn't need to be there. We now have magistrate judges in our jail 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've established a pretrial office to assess a person's risk to the community based on their history and other factors, not just their ability to pay a money bond. Because of the many reforms we have implemented, we are not the subject of lawsuits like our counterparts in Harris, Dallas, and Galveston. But we still have much more work to do in this area. But no commissioner had ever looked into our county's criminal justice practices. And I can say without a doubt, the last 5 years have ushered in the most significant reforms in our county's history. Unfortunately, one area where a lawsuit was necessary to bring about change happened in the neighboring school district in Clint ISD. For many years, Horizon High School and Mountain View High School were without adequate representation on the school board, and 6 out of the 7 school board trustees lived in the Clint High School feeder pattern. 1 representative lived in Horizon, and none lived near Mountain View High School. In 2013, several parents filed suit against the district, alleging their schools received less funding per student. For several years, I was the only elected official urging the board to switch to single-member districts so that every part of the school district would have representation. After several years and lawsuits, the district finally agreed to grant representation to all parts of the district last year. These are just some of the issues that underscore the need for a commissioner who is willing to fight hard for a community that has had to deal with corruption, lack of basic infrastructure, injustices in the criminal justice system, and denial of representation by other governmental entities. There are certainly other things that can be added to this list, such as the company from Amarillo that has been trying for 2 years to bring 100,000 pounds of medical waste per day into the heart of El Paso's Mission Valley. In fact, Claudia and I will be traveling to Austin this week to argue in the final hearing before the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality that this facility does not belong in our community because of the thousands of residents that would be impacted by its operations. Yet tomorrow, my opponent, the current chair of the Democratic Party, will announce her campaign for Commissioner of Precinct 3. Despite her service as chair, she has remained silent on some of the most pressing issues facing the people of our precinct. In the 2 years that Medcare Environmental, the medical waste company that has been seeking to locate in the Mission Valley, she never attended a public meeting, never submitted a letter of opposition, or opposed the facility in any way, either in her capacity as chair or as an impacted resident. Despite the denial of representation in the Clinton Independent School District, which effectively resulted in taxation without representation, never once did the chairwoman object to the lack of representation in lower income neighborhoods. And while the state Democratic Party has made criminal justice and bail reform an important priority, the chairwoman has remained silent on the inherent unfairness of impoverished individuals staying longer in jail than those who have the financial means to post bond. Nor has she ever raised concerns about the number of people who plead guilty to time served after serving several days or weeks in pretrial detention. In fact, during her leadership as chair, she has directed nearly $9,000 in El Paso County Democratic Party contributions to her family's consulting firm since last September. The Holguin consulting firm collected an additional $2,000 from the Tejano Democrats Paso del Norte, an organization where Mr. Holguin serves as chair and Mrs. Holguin serves as a member. In the same election cycle, the Holguin firm collected over $30,000 from then candidate Carl Robinson, who just a few months later appointed Ileana Holguin to the University Medical Center Board of Managers. It's these types of financial deals and insider appointments that undermine and erode public trust in our political leadership. This March primary, voters will have a clear choice: to continue moving forward with a commissioner with a proven track record of fighting hard for the people of our community, or a chair who has remained silent on the most pressing issues confronting the precinct she seeks to represent. I'm confident voters will make the right choice, and with your help, we can continue moving our historic Precinct 3 forward. Thank you for joining us.